everybody, it's Thursday, it's Litsoc, and we are back after the hiatus of last Thursday. And today it's Mr. Humphreys on Walter Tevis, the author. Nobody knows. They know the books, they know the films, but they don't, and the series, but they don't necessarily know the author. So Mr. Humphreys is going to tell us all about Walter Tevis. And nice to see everybody on this lovely sunny evening. Spring has sprung, yes. And over to you, Mr. Humphreys.
Thank you. I hope I'm not going to darken the mood too much. No, I won't actually. I won't. All right, so Walter Tevis. He is the most famous author that you've never heard of. Before today, who had heard of Walter Tevis around this table? There we go. Excellent. No, excellent. Bad. But you will know more about him by the end of this talk. Now, he's not the most prolific of novelists. I've got all but one of his novels here. There's 6 in total. There's only 5. He only wrote 6 novels across a 35-year period. But you all know, you will have heard at least of some of them, as Miss Huntley was saying. So, if only because of the movies and TV series that came out of them. So, first of all, you got The Hustler and its sequel, The Colour of Money. Now, those are movies that have got very prestigious names attached to them. Paul Newman, Tom Cruise, and directed by Martin Scorsese, in the case of the latter. Now, those are all names you're familiar with, I'm sure. Okay. Then we got The Man Who Fell to Earth. Now, there's an upcoming TV series of that coming out very soon. It's coming out on Showtime. Hopefully, will be available on Netflix or some other streaming platform. And that was also made into a 1976 movie starring
David Bowie.
And then, of course, perhaps, obviously, most pertinent to those of you around the table, we have got The Queen's Gambit. So, yeah, that's quite the legacy. That's quite a diverse range. And to me, that's what's most impressive about him, because these two are sci-fi novels. And they're sci-fi novels that deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as the classic sci-fi novels, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke. But then, of course, he's got these as well. So he's sort of like, and there are some authors, Ian Banks is a famous example, who sort of like dabble in sci-fi and realistic fiction, if you like, and he did it as Ian Banks and Ian M. Banks, but Walter Tevis got there first, many decades before. Now, there are many sort of recurring themes and tropes in Tevis's work, as we'll delve in, but I think the most fundamental thing about his work is that he writes from a real sort of warts and all sense of authenticity. He really describes the human experience with an emphasis on the warts, on the sort of the darker aspects of it, okay? So before I talk about his books, a bit about him. So he was born in 1928 in San Francisco. Now, when he was 10, his family went to live off with his father's sister in Kentucky. And he fell ill with rheumatic fever, and he was left behind in hospital for a whole year, all alone. Now, those of you who've seen The Queen's Gambit, you can see now where he got the episodes where Beth is alone in that orphanage for such a long time. That was very much informed by that. Now, when during his childhood, he played a lot of pool in a local pool hall. He devoured sci-fi books at his local library, and he learned to play chess on the street corners of his neighbourhood. All very obvious influences on all of these books here. Now, when he grew up, he was enlisted to fight in World War II. He served 2 years as a carpenter's mate, and then he went on to the University of Kentucky. He earned his bachelor's and his master's degree in English, and then he embarked on a teaching career, first of all in high school, and then later on he went to Ohio University as a university professor, okay? Now, The Hustler was his first novel, this one here, and he published it in 1959, and then his second one was The Man Who Fell to Earth, which came out in 1963. But then there was a long gap until his next novel, which was Mockingbird in 1980. Okay, now the reason for such big gaps in his work was, first of all, his teaching job took up a lot of his time. Perhaps more personally was his alcoholism. He became a big alcoholic, and at its worst levels, he was unable to actually answer the telephone or open the door to visitors when they came around to see him. So he was in quite a bad place, and it stifled his creativity. But he made a bounce back. He came back, and there was Mockingbird. Then he wrote The Queen's Gambit in 1983, and his last one was The Colour of Money, which is the sequel to The Hustler, in 1984. In 1984, he died of cancer, aged 56. So if he hadn't, first of all, had that long hiatus and not writing anything, and secondly, if he didn't die prematurely of cancer, who knows what else he would have given us, what else he would have written. Okay, so he's prolific. That's for sure. So, all right, the books now. So I'll start off with his sci-fi novels. Now, Walter Tevis himself, in an interview, he said if there's one common theme going through his work, there's one thing he's always writing about, it's about losers and loners, okay? And that he was obsessed with the struggle between winning and losing. Now, he describes The Man Who Fell to Earth as his most autobiographical one. That's when he says is very disguised autobiography. So you draw the conclusion that he sees himself as a loser and a loner as a result. And there are, even though it's a sci-fi novel, there are echoes in the main character's struggles that sort of resonate with him and his own life. So the premise of this story, the main character is an alien named Thomas Jerome Newton, who is disguised as a human. And he has come to Earth, our planet, to sort of like find what he needs to save his, because his planet is also dying. Now, what he does, he uses, because it's a more advanced planet, he uses technology from his own more advanced planet, and he harnesses that technology, sort of like amass wealth, material wealth, because that's what he needs. He needs sort of like, I won't go into the details, but he needs wealth to sort of help his own home planet, okay? But in the process, in becoming this big sort of public figure, big, huge public figure that's amassed, done all these amazing inventions, he's suddenly world famous, and of course the authorities get very suspicious of him as a result. They're keeping an eye on him, okay? Now, he is the man who fell to Earth in the sense that he's an alien who's come down to Earth, but it's more than just that. The title has got more than one meaning. Okay, so there are mythological overtones as well. Now, it starts off with this, 1985, Icarus Descending. Okay, so Icarus, who can tell me a bit about Icarus, Evie?
So he was, I'm not sure if it was with his son or his brother, but he was trapped on this island, and he decided to escape by sticking feathers to him with hot wax to kind of like make wings. And he ended up flying so close to the sun that the wax melted and he fell back into the sea and drowned.
That's it. That's exactly the myth of Icarus. Now, there's a reason that Walter Tevis has started with saying Icarus Descending, because basically Thomas, his path follows Icarus's, not just in the sense that he's fallen to Earth. He also flies too close to the sun. Metaphorically, his fall is as inevitable as his, all these wonderful gadgets and inventions. That's amazing. Everyone thinks it's fantastic. His fall is as inevitable and as dramatic as his rises. So essentially, he comes to Earth with all these good intentions, but as he adapts to Earth, he sort of adapts to our ways, and his noble alien aim kind of gets overwhelmed by our humanity.
Tragedy then, isn't it?
I don't want to say. I'd give away the ending if I do that.
All right, okay.
And so basically, his planet's got impending catastrophe, but he can foresee that we are also, our human ways, we are also have impending catastrophe, and we sort of like prioritize the more trivial things without looking further down the future. And it kind of makes it very cynical. And one thing that happens is that he lapses into alcoholism, a bit like Walter Tevis himself, our author. Okay, so I mentioned earlier there's a trailer. There's a TV adaptation. I'm going to play you the trailer now of that adaptation. Okay, so there's a couple of hopefully recognisable names in this trailer, so hopefully you can all see it. I will turn the volume up to the max. Okay, there we go.
There's a door in front of you. On the other side is something I could never imagine.
They're gonna take the house next month. I'm always working. Molly has no one. I saw something. It freaked me out.
I was sent to find you.
I'm talking to someone from another planet.
So am I.
Do you have anyone? A family, children?
They are waiting for me if they survived. My planet is dying. Earth is on the same trajectory. Can you help me? You are a scientist. You have the potential for all things.
I need to know where he's from, and I need to know what he's doing here.
I know what you are.
Go. Take him. Now.
I brought you here to finish what I started.
This is how we all survive.
Okay, so any first impressions there about how that looks and what kind of story it might be? I mean, I know not all of you could see that, but what do you think? Any first impressions? No. Okay.
Yeah, really, really poignant.
Really poignant.
Yeah, same.
Okay, well that's good. That's how all trailers should be. They should make you want to watch it more. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually play you. Now, this is a sort of fan trailer. It's not the actual official trailer of the David Bowie version. And I just want you to... So just think about what you... This one's a bit shorter. Just think about what you saw there and see how this one looks to you. So this is from 1976, David Bowie.
First one. This is it. I've always been visited.
Your wife's out there somewhere. She's waiting for you.
Okay, so what do you think of that one?
That looked like the very kind of cliched aliens, which is the big head and eyes, and like I understand that it's like obviously not good quality because it was in
1976 it was.
To me, that just felt like that. The modern trailer looks a lot better because it kind of made it into a better story. Didn't just make it into like a sci-fi story with just like cliched aliens. That one felt like what every sci-fi movie is almost.
Interesting. Now, Walter Tevis himself didn't like that movie. He really didn't like it. But this adaptation they're doing this year, it's probably more faithful and more. It's got more of a grittier, realist feel. Whereas that one, it's almost like you're walking into a David Bowie video.
Yes.
It's very surreal.
Much
It's very
harder.
very esoteric and very. It's basically it's classic David Bowie. It's like the Gene Genie, all that sort of thing. And it's Whereas this is probably more solid and grounded. So, have you seen it? The 1976 movie. It's probably not radically.
Very, very long time ago. University Film Society.
Has anyone seen Labyrinth by any chance? That's considered a bit of a classic where Bowie plays the Goblin King.
Yes.
It's not too different from that in some ways, and so we'll see what it's like. Now they do look very different. They both do sort of like have the same message and are faithful to the general premise of it. But even though they're very different, one bit of trivia for you: the episodes of this upcoming series, they're all named after David Bowie songs. That's a sort of nice little tribute to David Bowie. So there you go. Even if it is going to be very different fundamentally. Right, so that's The Man Who Fell to Earth. So then now Mockingbird. This is probably his least well-known novel, actually. But it certainly is very worthwhile. Definitely worth you reading. Now, it's part The Matrix because humans are drugged in this world. It's very much a dystopia, by the way. Humans are drugged and lulled into a sort of false reality, just like they are in Matrix. It's part Brave New World. because they're in a state of medicated, preconditioned at birth bliss. They're all happy in their ignorance. And it's part Fahrenheit 451, because there's no literature, all books are burnt, and there's also no art in general. Also, there are no children in this world. So children, you would not be in existence in this novel. Okay, so there's a nice thought for you. Now, there's 3 narrators. There's a machine called Spofford. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now, he's a dean of studies at university, and he's designed to be the most perfect machine ever created. And despite this, he's lived for hundreds of years. The only desire he has is that he wants to cease to be. He's seen too much and he wants to move on. Now, you might think it's all mega depressing. It's a mega depressing read. But actually, surprisingly, it isn't. Okay. Now, the key to this is that he gets a shot of salvation by the arrival of the other 2 narrators, who are a couple called Bentley and Mary Lou. And they gradually, over the course of the events, I mean, it's a bit of a bumpy ride, but over the course of the novel, they reveal to him the hope that can be found in books and in love. Okay? And it's facilitated most by Bentley, because he becomes a colleague of Spofford at the university. And Spofford imprisons Bentley for the crime of reading. If you get, this is it. Now, Bentley had learned to read, not from books. He basically came across a film that had words that matched with a children's primer. You know what primer is? It's sort of like a textbook that's that is designed to teach you to read, essentially, and the words in this primer match the movie, and that's how he learns to read, by sort of like comparing that to watching the movie. Okay. And when he's incarcerated, he discovers books, and he gets all sorts of new experiences, and it sort of opens a whole new state of being for him. And I'll just read you a little extract to show you the power of books and reading, as if I need any convincing of you all here. So this is from Bentley's perspective as he's in jail and he's reading. I read continuously. I read until I can stay awake no longer and fall in bed and lie there with my mind whirling, with faces and people and ideas from the past crowding and confusing me until exhausted I fall asleep. And I am learning new words, 30 or 40 a day. Long before robots and privacy, mankind had a violent and astonishing history. I hardly knew how to think or feel about some of the dead people I have read of and of the great events. There is the Russian Revolution and the French Revolution and the Great Flood of Fire and World War III and the Denver Incident. I was taught as a child that all things before the Second Age were violent and destructive because of a failure to respect individual rights. But it was never more specific than that. We had never developed a sense of history as such. All we knew, if we ever thought about it, was that there had been others before us and that we were better than they. But no one was ever encouraged to think about anything outside of himself. Don't ask. Relax. Very brave new world. I'm amazed to think of the number of people who must have screamed and died on battlefields in order to fulfill the ambitions of presidents and emperors, or of the aggregation into the hands of some large groups of people, like the United States of America, great reserves of wealth and power, denied to most others. And yet, despite all this, there seem to have been good and kind men and women, and many of them happy. So I just thought I'd read that extract, because obviously it resonates somewhat with things that are going on in the world right now. And of course, yes. So the message is clear there that even in the darkest times, books can give you salvation. If you just read the news and just look at the focus on the headlines, think of Ben Davis's talk yesterday. It can be very depressing. But if you just think about most people are honourable, decent, and kind, and if you just focus on your immediate sphere and what you can influence, then you can change the world, and that's what happens in Mockingbird, without giving away too much spoilers. Right, now before I move on to the others, I just wanted to say that he has got another sci-fi novel, but I've not read it. It's called The Steps of the Sun. Can't talk about it. All I know about it is that it features a world, and it's another dystopia, where there's been an energy crisis and China is the main superpower. That's what I know about it. Okay, so just for the sake of completeness, I thought I'd give a passing mention to that one. Right then, let's move on to these 3 then. Now, these are his sort of, you can loosely categorise these as his sporting novels, if you like, okay? Because 2 are about American pool, and 1 is about chess. And both of them have a fair few similarities with each other, as they do with these, in the sense that they both centre on a brilliant maverick prodigy, who is something of an outsider and a loner, but their personal demons, in their wider life, sort of invade the arena of sport that they are excelling in. So that's what's going on. Now, in the case of The Hustler, and indeed its sequel, The Colour of Money, the protagonist is someone called Fast Eddie Felson. Now, he's played by Paul Newman in both film adaptations. And now both stories are sort of like, yes, they are sort of, in the way that The Queen's Gambit is a celebration of chess, this is a paean to the simple beauty of playing pool. Because, there's the mathematical, maths teachers love pool because of the the mathematical precision, the geometry required in sort of, knocking the pool balls around the table, solving the angles to get the pool balls in the pocket. Plus, there's also like certain poetry to it, the way that the balls roll across the bays. And the setting of a pool hall itself is quite a romanticised kind of place. So I mentioned that Tevis played pool often when he was growing up. Now, he had a friend called Toby Kavanagh, who's a very rich friend. He had a pool table in his mansion, did Toby Kavanagh, and he later owned a pool hall of his own. And Walter Tevis sort of bummed around in his pool hall for a bit when he was a young man, and that's sort of what has inspired him to write The Hustler. Because, obviously he played it as a child, but also as he was maturing, it gave him the idea, okay, I'll give an idea for a novel. And sort of it's these experiences that inform how he described this. So here's a description of a pool hall that's from the first chapter. So, a pool room in the morning is a strange place. It has stages, a daily metamorphosis, a shedding of patterned skins. Now, at 9 a.m, it could have been a large church. Still, sun coming through the stained windows, wrapped into itself. The great tables timeless and massive mahogany, their green cloths discreetly hidden by grey oilcloth covers. The fat brass spittons were lined along both walls between the tall chairs, with seats of honest and enduring leather, rump polished to an antique gloss. And above all, the high arched ceiling with its 4 great chandeliers and its many-paned skylight. For this was the top floor of an ancient and venerable building, which, squat and ugly, sat in 8-story insignificance in downtown Chicago. The huge room, with the viewers' chairs, high-backed and grouped reverently around each of the 22 tables, could have been a sanctuary, a shabby cathedral. But later, when the rack boys and the cashier came in, when the overhead fans were turned on, and when Gordon, the manager, would play music on his radio, then the room would adopt the quality that is peculiar to the daytime life of those places which are only genuinely alive at night. The mid-morning quality of nightclubs or bars and pool rooms everywhere. The big, nearly empty room echoing the shuffling of a few feet. The occasional clinking of glass or of metal. The sounds of brooms, of wet rags, of pieces of furniture being moved around. And the half-real music that comes from radios. And above all, the sense of the place is not yet being alive, yet having now within it the first beginnings of the evening resurrection. And then, in the afternoon, when the players began to come in earnest, and tobacco smokes, and the sounds of hard glossy balls hitting one another, and the squeaking sound of chalk squares pressed against his hard leather Q-tips would begin, then would start the final stage of the metamorphosis, ascending to the full, only when, late at night, the casual players and the drunks would all be gone, leaving only the intent men and the furtive, who watched and bet, while certain others, a small, assorted group of men, both drably and brightly dressed, who all knew one another but seldom spoke, played quiet games of intense and brilliant pools on the tables in the back of the room. At such times, this pool room, Bennington's, would be alive in a distinct way. So it's pool as literature there. That's
almost as a religion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you can see it's very richly described, and yes, it is a religion because you think of if you think of monks perhaps and their daily routine, it's sort of like that.
Cathedral.
Absolutely, yeah. There's the religious imagery.
Yes, the fact it only comes into use at certain times.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So it's got so you can see why it's almost got a cult like vibe to it, and everyone's like really really keen to play pool. So now the story itself, it's not so much about Fast Eddie's progress as a pool player, playing against other pool players, as it is, as I mentioned earlier, about his entire lived-in experience of humanity, but it's distilled through the pool table, through what he's doing on the pool table. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but now, obviously, as you might have picked up from the descriptions there of the pool hall and everyone in it, the circles that Eddie Moon here, they're quite seedy, shady characters that he's sort of like interacting with, in The Hustler in particular. And, it's lots of shady characters gambling lots of money with lots of high stakes, and high stakes can be very brutal and can have very, very dire consequences. You've seen the movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you might remember in the first movie in particular, it does go to a dark place. Now, his journey to redemption, it's not your conventional, glorious, overcome the odds, rags to riches sporting tale where he lifts a trophy. It doesn't unfold like that. So, as I said, Tevis himself, he was, as in his words, I'm obsessed with the struggle between winning and losing. And his characters, they're almost all losers. In sci-fi novels too, in some way or another start, they sort of typify that struggle of become losing to winning. Now in Fast Eddie case, it's not how much he wins or loses at pool. It might be on the surface. It's more about how he deals with adversity away from the pool table and fulfills himself being the best possible human being he can be first, and then he wins at pool second. Okay, that's the general premise, and this very much, of course, applies to Beth Harmon, protagonist of the novel that most of you have been waiting for me to talk about, The Queen's Gambit. So, well, what is the specific special appeal of this one? What appeals to you? I'd like to ask you, because most of you have seen the TV series. What appeals to you about The Queen's Gambit? Why do you like it so much?
I just think it's such the way that it's all just like, it's also like how you were describing like the Hustler as well. It's like all based around this one game, and like all the stories that happen just kind of like evolve around this one thing.
Around, in this case, chess. Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
So you like the way that chess is sort of like the unifying force in the novel. Okay, interesting. Any other? What else do you like about it? Anyone else want to say what they like about The Queen's Gambit? Maybe, who has seen it? Who has seen it? Yeah. What do you like about it, Hannah?
I think Anya Taylor-Joy's great.
You like what? Sorry.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay. Oh, the actor, the main actor. Yeah. She's really good, isn't she? Actually, she sort of gives a really, really great performance in it. Anything else? Any other thoughts on that? No. Okay. Right. Well, now my answer to that, it's yes. I kind of agree with Evie that chess is the main thing about it. Now I'm going to refer to you what a chess grandmaster wrote once. His name's Dave Norwood. Now he said that chess is the perfect embodiment of polarity. Now, what he means by this is that two people playing chess against each other are in a complete state of opposition, not just because they're opponents in a game, but they're opponents in thought and deed as well. It's like a real sort of intellectual battle of wits. And now the idea is that the greater your opponent across the table from you, the better a chess player they are, the greater there is the sense of unity. Unless, of course, one of you throws the table across the room in a strop, then that all comes apart. But, if you think about how the story evolves, how it unfolds, and by the way, the TV adaptation is very faithful to this, which is great. If you think about how that unfolds, you see that the quality of Beth's opponents increase. She starts off with very low opposition, then she gradually gets better and better, and ends up playing against this Russian grandmaster at the end. And as her opponent's quality increases, so does chess itself unify all of the fragmented aspects of her character. Because as we all know, she's got a lot of baggage outside of it, as those of you who've seen it know. And this, of course, applies to Fast Eddie too, very much so, in a different way. He's not going through a tournament, but he's going through a different sort of journey of self-discovery with Paul as the unifying force. Okay, now Beth. You all know Beth's amazing at chess from a very young age. She's a chess prodigy, learning in the basement at the sort of girls' home that she grows up in. But she does have she has a very difficult childhood and lots of adversity there. She has a really, really rough start in life, I think it's fair to say. And chess, of course, becomes her salvation. It gives her purpose. But early on, of course, she lacks great opposition, and this sort of hampers her growth as a chess player and indeed as a person, not just a chess player. Her overall development too is kind of stunted. So, I'm just going to read you a bit of it. And this is from the passage when you may remember, she goes to a local school, and she plays against the entire chess club there simultaneously, and she just defeats them all. So this is her experience of it. Her mind was luminous, and her soul sang to her in the sweet muse of chess. The classroom smelled of chalk dust, and her shoes squeaked as she moved down the rows of players. The room was silent. She felt her own presence centered in it, small and solid and in command. Outside, birds sang, but she did not hear them. Inside, some of the students stared at her. Boys came in from the hallway and lined up along the back wall to watch the homely girl from the orphanage at the edge of town, who moved from player to player with the determined energy of a Caesar in the field, a Pavlova under the lights. There were about a dozen people watching. Some smirked and yawned, but others could feel the energy in the room. The presence of something that had never, in the long history of this tired old schoolroom, been felt there before. What she did was at bottom shockingly trivial, but the energy of her amazing mind crackled in the room for those who knew how to listen. Her chess moves blazed with it. By the end of an hour and a half, she had beaten them all without a single false or wasted move. She stopped and looked around her. Captured pieces sat in clusters beside each board. A few students were staring at her, but most avoided her eyes. There was scattered applause. She felt her cheeks flush. Something in her reached out desperately towards the boards, the dead positions on them. There was nothing left there now. She was just a little girl again, without power. Oops. So you can see, so as I'm saying early on in the she's beating these people really, really easily. They're not sort of like bringing out the best of her across the chessboard, and of course that's what sort of means that there's something missing for her in her sort of journey towards self-fulfillment. Same with Fast Eddie. You know, he's got very, very low opposition and they gradually improve. So as the quality of her opponents do increase as the story progresses, the demons, the vices, alcoholism being one, sort of take a greater hold on her. And so that's the dangers where, you know, her brilliance, the chess obsession threatens to consume her and swallow her whole. Okay? So she could indeed basically fall to earth like Icarus. So you can see all the different connections we can make between all these novels. She can fall to Icarus, like Icarus does, the main character does in The Man Who Fell to Earth. Now, does she end up self-destructing? Well, those of you who've seen the series will know. Now, I don't want to talk about that because then we'll start giving away spoilers. So what I'm going to do instead, now you might have noticed there's a chessboard on here, on the table, right? Hands up who can play chess, just remind me.
That's good.
3 of you, 3 or 4 of you. Okay, so now what I've got there on the table, that is a chess puzzle straight from the Queen's Gambit. Okay, it comes towards the end of the story. Now, those who've seen the series, it's when she's preparing to play the Russian Grandmaster, and she's in Benny's basement. And you remember Benny, the guy with the moustache, who really pushed her and had her number for a while, but then she turned the tables on him, and they become sort of friends. And this is a problem. Okay, so basically, you are white. And you need to checkmate black in 3 moves. Now, Beth, she did this in a matter of seconds. She works out in a matter of seconds. I'm going to be a bit more generous. I'm going to give you as long as this 2.5 minute video takes to play it. And just to increase the pressure, what happens in this video, this is when Beth is beating everyone at speed chess in the basement. So, you know, see if you can do as brilliantly as her. So who can play chess again?
Mary or Evie, Eleanor.
Okay, who wants to be? Does anyone want to be black? Because the problem is to sort of, in 3 moves, checkmate black. But let's have one person being black, playing black. Who would like to play black?
I don't want to play at all.
You don't want to play at all? All right, fine. I'll be back. I'll be black then. So, because right.
So white to move first?
Yes, it is white to move first, and what I'm going to, like I said, just to increase the pressure a bit, sort of mess with your minds, I'm going to have Beth playing in the background down the speed chess scene from the series, playing in the background of her just destroying everyone. Ooh. Well, yeah.
When you're watching a game of chess, it seems so intense.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Right. Okay. So you might want to get a bit closer to the board, people, to work this out. So, like I said, I'll be black. Right. To your 2 minutes and 20 seconds starts now. Go. And all the while, look at what Beth's doing.
I'm not even looking at what she's doing.
You can hear Georgie Fames. Look at Beth, look what she's doing. You can't see how she's like basically effortlessly beating 4 people at the same time. 1983, the year I was born, incidentally. Yes. Any ideas yet, people? What's your first move? You got to do it in 3 moves, remember?
Interesting.
If I move one, I will move because bishop can move however many squares along the diagonal.
Hello, Lily.
Working out how we can checkmate black.
In 3 moves.
Beth Harmon did it in a few seconds. I'm giving her 2.5 minutes. Giving them all 2.5 minutes.
Oh yeah,
It's straight from the Queen's Gambit. You've got a lot less time than it. As soon as this video finishes. I'm just increasing the pressure because she's like beating everyone at speed chess.
Yeah, this is not.
That's the whole point. I wanted to put pressure on you. Also, it's a great song as well. So it's an excuse to get some nice music in the background. Yes. All right, so that's the.
I think I know how to do it.
on them.
Yeah. Okay. Evie thinks she has it. So what do we do?
Okay, so first can I actually move the pieces or what just?
Yes. Of course.
Bring forward.
Hang on. Black
Let
moves. Black moves.
haven't you?
All right. So you have.
No. That's
Yeah. No. You can move yours.
first. Move first,
Okay.
but black will have to come back at you.
Now,
So do you want to?
Stop what I was doing. Oh god. Okay.
I'll give you a bit longer.
Yes.
I have the solution, by the way. Of
So I
course.
have to try and wait. Which one do I have to checkmate?
The Black King.
But the king can go anywhere. Well,
It can go in anywhere, but only
But
one
once,
square at a time. But it
still.
can't.
Time.
But they can still go anywhere. Like they could go there, or there.
Yeah, they could retreat.
Well, they could go there, or there, but they're probably not
They can
going
go in
to,
all
are they?
directions just in one square.
But they're not going to go there because the king could.
In case you're wondering why you have to do it in 3 moves, if you don't do it in 3 moves, there's a high possibility of a stalemate, a draw. Because there's very often a stalemate happens when there's very few pieces left the board, and the king will constantly get put on check, but can get out of check again and again and again.
Wait, can't you?
So if you don't wrap it up soon, that might happen.
Try it, Mariel. Try it. Make
Sorry,
a move,
what?
and then Mr. Humphries will come back to you.
Can
I know.
could you just do that?
That's not how knights
No.
move.
That's probably taking out, like, that's going over 2, and that won't work. That's the only
Yeah.
reason it's more.
Oh yeah.
The only thing we could do is try and take
The only thing I
the
think.
little one out, but then that
Not try and
little
take the
one will get
pawn.
out, but then we could try and
No, because
move one of
those
them.
two are trapped. They can't move because they can only move.
And I give you another minute, then then I'll have to tell you the
Really
solution.
close.
We can't stay here for the rest of the evening to work this out. I'm afraid.
Wait, can black move first? Because then if black
No,
moves to the other
white's
one.
moving first.
No, white has to move first. The 2 pawns are.
Hang on, I've got an idea.
Two
If
pawns
we
are in
move one of the other pieces away from
Hey,
the
Alice got an
and
idea.
then
Just remember, Beth did this in seconds.
Yes, but she's a
If the-
she's a chess prodigal. We're not that.
if the queen can move either one direction, we might be able to get her out. If she moves to the next
Shall I put the music back on? Will that help you?
We
No,
don't have to.
no, do not.
But these aren't queens.
Oh, the suspense.
If we move
It's a great song.
that night,
The soundtrack, by the way, to the Queen's Gambit is really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I mean, if you just hope that the
You can't
hope
hope in chess.
if we just hope that they
Oh,
go
of course
on,
you can hope. You can always hope. Doesn't matter what the sport is.
If we just hope that black goes on like there or there.
Right, 1 more minute, and I give you,
then we
and
can
I'll
just
tell you what the
take
solution is.
bishop, But like,
You've got the added incentive of the Maltesers now that Lulu's provided.
You can give the whole bag of Maltesers to anyone who works it out.
Oh.
No, there's like 10 I wouldn't give you 2
Well, there's enough for everybody, isn't there?
Why is this so hard?
I will take this opportunity to do a nice plug for Mr. McGrath Chess Club. It's Wednesday lunchtime at 1 o'clock.
Right.
There you go, Mr. McGrath. You owe me one.
I know one move we can make.
Right, okay. Right, so look, essentially, if you do this, then it doesn't matter what black does, you're bound to win. Okay? So if black...
oh my god,
That's so clever.
Yeah, if black... let's say that black responds by... I've got it all written down here. If black responds by doing this, then you can move this knight here to g6, which is... oh god, the numbers are all confused. Okay, and then knight c6, and then whatever black does, it doesn't really matter what black does. Then you can you move the knight in place and you checkmate, and then
I do not get that.
Okay, so basically, if the king moves there, the king can take out all the
Yeah.
bishop, and if it also moves there, the knight can take them out.
yeah.
So they've got-
Yeah,
So either way,
essentially, and then if if the king moves there, then you can move this other knight in place and trap him as well.
The bishop can.
Yeah. So basically,
simple
that's
and
all you had to do.
effective.
That's all you had to do. You completely cut off all options, but it is a difficult problem. So, fair play to you all for giving it a crack and trying it. Well done. It's a difficult problem. It's a difficult problem.
Thinking, because you don't know where to move. Then all of a sudden, if you move one piece in the right direction, then it all kind of makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. It's that three-dimensional thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, this is it. It's all about thinking, and you just remember how she just has the chess pieces coming down from the ceiling, and it's all about thinking several moves ahead and seeing the big picture instead of just
Whenever
looking at the immediate thing.
Whenever I play chess, I always do the moves in my head and then think, what? But then I have to do every single possible move with every single piece, and it's too much.
Well, yeah, and again, you have to have a certain brain to be a really good chess player, and of course, Beth Harmon does. Okay, right. So I'll sum up now. Then, so again, I'll draw it back to what he said. He basically Walter Tevis. He boiled down his books to being about the struggle between winning and losing, and yes, that does play a big part. But he does there are other aspects to the bundle: obsessive behaviour. All of the characters are obsessive to certain degrees with what they're going on. Vices. But probably most of all, the paradox of brilliance and self-destruction going hand in hand, but enduring despite and because of yourself being at your lowest ebb. It's all about enduring. Now, as is hopefully apparent, to borrow a phrase from the Man Who Fell to Earth trailer, the trajectory of his own life and his novelistic output in many ways mirrors that of all of the characters in the books, as is hopefully apparent. Now, as with certain of his protagonists, some of them do, some of them don't, we should be grateful that he did find a way to gain redemption and to shake off his personal demons to produce the wonderful novels that he did.
Yes.
So thank you, Mr. Tevis, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Well done, Mr. Humphreys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really interesting.